You know, I've always felt that death is the greatest invention of life.
No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life.
On the morning of July 31st, 2004, Steve Jobs finally allowed a surgeon to open his body. Stanford University Medical Center. Jobs sits on the edge of a gurney in a hospital gown. The surgeon will find what 9 months of alternative therapies may not have caused, but had failed to stop. The cancer has spread to his liver. Steve Jobs is 49 years old. In October 2003, Apple was surging. The iPod was rewriting the music industry, and Jobs was at the height of his creative powers. A CT scan ordered for kidney stones caught something else, a shadow on his pancreas. His doctors braced for the worst and ordered a biopsy. The results came back. A pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, sometimes called an islet cell tumor, a rare cancer of the pancreas. When most people hear pancreatic cancer, they think of the common form adenocarcinoma, one of the deadliest major cancers, often discovered late and fatal within months. But Jobs does not have that. He has the rare variant that is actually curable, roughly 1 to 2% of all pancreatic cancers. The 5-year survival rate for this specific diagnosis, caught this early with surgical resection, as high as 90%. In his misfortune, Steve Jobs just won a lottery that almost no pancreatic cancer patient ever wins. His doctors urge him to schedule surgery quickly, telling him this is one of the rare pancreatic tumors that may be treatable if removed in time. Jobs tells them he needs to think about it. Mid-October 2003, the Jobs residence, Palo Alto. Jobs commits to a strict regimen, vegan diet, large quantities of fresh carrot and fruit juice, periodic fasts, bowel cleanses, herbal supplements, acupuncture, and consultations with a spiritualist. He approaches it with the intensity he brings to everything. Jobs tells his doctor he will not have the surgery. He later says to Walter Isaacson, "I really didn't want them to open up my body, so I tried to see if a few other things would work."
Why doesn't he get it operated on immediately?
You know, I've asked him that. He said, I didn't want my body to be opened. I didn't want to be violated in that way.
For most people, that sentence sounds like fear. For Jobs, it was something more. He had spent decades controlling every physical object he touched, the weight of a device, the radius of a corner, the exact grade of a metal finish. To him, surrendering his body to a stranger with a scalpel would be a departure from his identity built on control. The same instinct that made him insist the original Macintosh's internal circuit board, a part no customer would ever see, be beautiful, was now turned inward onto the one system he could not actually design.
Whoa, what is this? I've got another call coming in. Johnny, can I put you on hold for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I put Johnny on hold and, hi, Phil.
Hi, Steve. I wanted to be the first call.
You can see the button has changed to merge calls right there in the middle, so I just pushed that right here, and now I've created a conference call.
Jobs seemed to believe he could manage the situation through control, changing inputs, trying alternatives, and postponing the operation he did not want. But there was something far deeper, the logical outcome of a lifelong spiritual and dietary philosophy. Since his teenage years, Jobs had been a devoted Zen Buddhist. He had traveled to India in search of enlightenment, practiced intensive meditation, and came to trust intuition and inner clarity over conventional Western rationality. He had a Zen master named Kobunchino Otogawa, an unconventional Japanese Soto Zen priest who presided over his marriage with Laureen Powell. At the same time, he had followed extreme vegan and fruitarian diets for decades, eating only fruits and vegetables for long stretches, fasting for days or weeks at a time, and believing that pure inputs could produce a pure vital body. He had even named Apple while on one of those fruitarian diets. Now facing cancer, he turned to the same dietary and spiritual toolkit he had always trusted. What is clear is that he delayed the standard treatment doctors recommended. What is less clear from the public record is exactly how much that delay changed the course of his disease. Arthur Levinson, a member of Apple's board, CEO of biotech giant Genentech, and a close friend, urges him to have the surgery. Jobs shuts him down. Other doctors weigh in. The message is the same. There is no evidence diet can cure a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor. Jobs shuts them down too. He keeps the diagnosis tightly held. Apple shareholders do not know. Only a handful of people inside Apple and very few board members are told. It is spring 2004. Jobs' phone rings. The caller is Andy Grove, the legendary CEO and chairman of Intel, and one of the few people in Silicon Valley whose counsel Jobs genuinely respected. Grove beat his own prostate cancer in 1995 by doing what Jobs refuses to do, obsessively studying the clinical evidence and choosing the treatment the data best supported, even when it wasn't what his own doctors initially recommended. Grove tells Jobs that there's no credible evidence a special diet could treat a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, certainly nothing that would survive the kind of scrutiny Grove himself was famous for. According to Walter Isaacson, Grove recounted, quote, "Steve talked to me when he was trying to cure himself by eating horseshit and horseshit roots, and I told him he was crazy." End quote. It was a glaring contradiction. The man who demanded empirical perfection for his products was running his own body on a hunch. By all accounts, Jobs heard him out, but he still did not move quickly to surgery. Dean Ornish, a physician and friend Jobs deeply respects, reaches out. Ornish, too, urges Jobs to have the surgery. Even Ornish, the man who made mainstream medicine take diet seriously, insists this isn't something lifestyle changes alone can fix. Jobs now measures something new, something people can see. Inside Apple, only a tight circle of trusted people know about the tumor. Jobs treats the information the way he treats unreleased products, like a state secret. His weight is dropping. His clothes fit differently. Those closest to him notice the change, though it isn't yet the drastic decline the public will one day see. Employees also likely notice some changes. But at Apple, you don't ask Steve Jobs questions he didn't invite you to ask. And yet this secret is becoming a strategic, dangerous issue for Apple. Steve Jobs is not merely the CEO. In the eyes of Wall Street and the public, he is Apple. Two clocks are now running. The first is biological. A pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor still inside his body, following its own uncertain course. The second is institutional. Every week the secret holds, it becomes heavier. It is becoming a corporate governance concern, raising hard questions about disclosure, contingency planning, and who inside Apple is even allowed to confront the issue. The same man obsessing over his daily juice intake is also the man whose health, by any reasonable reading of SEC materiality standards, could constitute a material fact, one that affects the investment decisions of countless shareholders and investors who have no idea any of this is happening. Meanwhile, the effects on his body are getting harder to hide. July 2004. Jobs agrees to a follow-up CT scan, his first imaging in 9 months. The follow-up imaging appears to have convinced Jobs that delay was no longer tenable. The medical evidence his advisors had urged him to take seriously was now impossible to shrug off. The scans did not erase the months of hesitation, but helped push him toward the surgery he had resisted for so long. Jobs contacts his surgeon at Stanford and schedules a modified Whipple procedure. A standard Whipple removes part of the stomach, while a modified Whipple preserves it. July 31st, 2004. Stanford University Medical Center. The body will now be opened. Steve Jobs, in a hospital gown, is wheeled into position. The anesthesiologist places a mask over his face. Within seconds, the man who makes every decision at Apple has made his last decision of the day. The doors close. The surgical team begins a modified Whipple procedure, a version of the operation his doctors first recommended 9 months earlier, now more extensive given the tumor's progression. It is not a minor surgery. The Whipple removes the head of the pancreas, the duodenum, the gallbladder, and a portion of the bile duct, then reconstructs the digestive tract from what remains. Recovery can take weeks to months. The complication rate can reach 20 to 40%, even at the best hospitals in the world. It is the kind of operation that makes a person feel beforehand that they would rather try anything else first. And Jobs did. The lead surgeon locates the tumor on the pancreas. It is larger than when it was first discovered 9 months ago, but the primary mass is still removable. The team proceeds. As part of the operation, the surgical team would typically assess nearby tissue and organs for signs of spread. They inspect the liver, and the surgeon confirms what the latest imaging had suggested: the cancer has spread. During those 9 months, while Jobs pursued alternative approaches and stubbornly resisted surgery, the tumor had time to send cells into his bloodstream. Whether those cells would have been there regardless, no one can say for certain. But the delay gave them every opportunity to find his liver. And they did. The surgeon completes the Whipple. The primary tumor is removed. The next day, he sends an email to Apple employees from his hospital bed. He writes that he has had surgery for a rare form of pancreatic cancer. He writes that the prognosis is good. He writes that he will be back in September. The stock doesn't crash. There's no public sign of a board-level crisis. The reality distortion field, even now, does its job once more. Jobs returns to Apple. He announces the iPhone in January 2007 and ships it that June, the App Store in July 2008. Each keynote, he is thinner. Each public appearance generates whispers and speculation. Behind the product launches, a second timeline is running. In the years after surgery, Jobs' cancer spread to his liver and continued to progress. The treatments available, including drug therapy and experimental options, are buying time, not resolution. Around 2008, Jobs is pursuing advanced treatment, including experimental options at Stanford and other institutions, and managing the disease the way he manages everything, with intense personal involvement in every decision. He cycles through oncologists until he finds ones who will engage with him as a collaborator. It's not enough. By early 2009, the cancer has progressed to the point where he needs a liver transplant, the most aggressive surgical intervention available, a far more radical operation than the pancreatic surgery he refused in October 2003. Meanwhile, Tim Cook quietly has himself tested and discovers they share a compatible blood type. He goes to Jobs and offers a partial living liver donation. It is not a casual offer. A living donor procedure carries real surgical risk for the donor, weeks of recovery, a permanent alteration to their own body. Jobs refuses. According to those close to him, he is moved by the offer in a way he rarely allows himself to be moved. But he will not accept it. He tells Cook he will never let him do that. The man who spent 9 months refusing to let a surgeon open his own body will not let someone else carry that risk on his behalf. March 2009, Methodist University Hospital, Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. James Eason performs the transplant. The operation is kept secret from the public. Jobs has flown in on a private jet because the Memphis area offered significantly shorter transplant wait times than California. Multiple listing is legal, but it's a strategy available mainly to the wealthy, a fact that drew scrutiny when the transplant became public. Jobs returns to work, launches the iPad, takes another medical leave in early 2011, and then on June 6, 2011, he takes the stage at the Moscone Center to announce iCloud, a system that by its nature would outlast many of the people who use it. He is the thinnest anyone has ever seen him, The black mock turtleneck hangs from a frame that is barely there. Jobs suspects his time is running out. Back in 2004, he had first approached Walter Isaacson, who had written acclaimed biographies of Henry Kissinger, Benjamin Franklin, and Albert Einstein, to write his bio. Isaacson had put him off, thinking it was too early. But around 2009, Jobs' wife Lorene told Isaacson, "If you're ever going to do a book on Steve, you'd better do it now." Jobs called again, this time with urgency. He told Isaacson he wasn't going to be well enough to wait much longer. Isaacson comes. As he later described, they sat together at Jobs' home in Palo Alto. In Isaacson's telling, Jobs acknowledged he should have had the surgery sooner, that trying alternatives had been a mistake.
How could such a smart man do such a stupid thing?
Yeah, I think that he kind of felt that if you ignore something, if you don't want something to exist, you can have magical thinking, and it had worked for him in the past. He regretted, some of the decisions he made, and certainly I think he felt he should have been operated on sooner.
Over the years that follow, Isaacson keeps coming back. They talk for hours at a time, often during walks. According to Isaacson, when it comes to his diagnosis, Jobs seems genuine, not performing. His famous reality distortion field is set aside. He is a man trying to tell as much of his truth as possible before he runs out of time to say it. October 5th, 2011. At home in Palo Alto, Jobs is surrounded by his family. As Mona Simpson, Jobs' biological sister, recounts, before embarking, he'd looked at his sister Patty, then for a long time at his children, then at his life's partner, Lorene, and then over their shoulders past them. His last words, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." He is 56 years old. Apple, Jobs' life's work, stands stronger than ever and is about to slip from his living grip into his legacy.
The death of a man who literally changed the way we live our lives every day. Steve Jobs, the visionary founder and leader of Apple Computer, has died at the age of 56.
No one can say with certainty that earlier surgery would have saved him, but every oncologist who reviewed the case believed it would have dramatically improved his odds. Did his need to control every input, to delay the knife, to design every outcome, ever have an off switch? Those around him tried to find it, but in the end, not even Jobs could. That same force that made him impossible to replace also perhaps made him harder to save.